give it a little bit to let people connect. It takes some time. Okay, so I'm going to call our meeting back to order. Reconvening for the public session of the North Kingstown School Committee. Again, today is August 25th, 2020. And if I could ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Mr. Glassbach?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Mrs. Schott? Joe Vento?
Here.
Thank you.
And
I'm here, sorry, this is Sally, I'm here, I apologize.
Hi, Sally. Okay, so I'm just going to mention now that pursuant to the governor's executive orders due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being conducted virtually by Zoom. So I'm going to start, see if anyone had any presentations or recognitions.
I don't have anything tonight, Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you. The next item would be citizens' comments. So as we always say, if you could please leave your comments to 3 minutes to give everyone an opportunity to speak, and also please state your name and address for the record. In case people aren't familiar with how we do Zoom, if you'd like to speak, in the participant section there is a button that is labeled Raise Your Hand. If you click that, it will indicate to me that you would like to speak. And if you are on the phone, I always forget to write this down, I think it's *9. Is what you put if you are calling in by telephone and you have the opportunity to speak. And I do see at least one hand going up, so people are getting that. I'll give it another minute, and then I'll start calling on people. You can raise your hand whenever you are ready, and I'll give you the opportunity. And I also apologize, I only see what your screen name is on Zoom, which sometimes leads to interesting screen names, because I don't know your real name. So first person I'm going to call on is Heather iPhone. So you can unmute yourself and speak. Again, if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record, please.
This is Heather Murphy, 41 Mountain Laurel Way. I'm just curious why we're doing public comment before the presentation.
We always do public comment at the beginning of our meetings. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to have people upset that we've made a decision after that. We don't want people to have only have the opportunity to speak after we've made our decisions. So that's why we always put it first.
Sure, I guess I was under the impression there was a new proposal coming forward tonight, and that's why I asked, because I don't know what my questions are.
Okay, well, we have our agenda and we have citizens' comments now. It's not, citizens' comments aren't for questions, and I actually shouldn't be answering questions. It's just you have 3 minutes to speak on any topic you'd like.
Okay then, well, please school committee hear my opinion that full distance learning is a bad idea. And if the decision is being made in terms of scientific reasons, I'm wondering who we're consulting, because our top epidemiologist, Dr. Fauci, says Rhode Island is green, go back to school. So I would implore you to please advocate for our children to be back in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Next hand I see is labeled Melissa.
Yes, Melissa Asher. My address is 50 Sweet Meadow Drive. And I guess my comments would be related to taking of the temperatures. You know, I was reading that other school districts in the state, such as Smithfield, will be taking student temperatures and presumably staff before they can enter the school. And I just strongly feel that that should also be, you know, something that considers. That, and also ventilation. This may be more of a question, which I know this is not the forum for that, but I am concerned about the air ventilation in the classrooms, and I would just like to learn a little bit more about what the district is doing in terms of ensuring outside air is coming into the schools, whether it be leave the windows open all the time, even in the winter, but eager to see if that is being addressed.
Thank you very much. Next person is Kate Scott.
Hi, Kate Scott, 10 Jasmine Circle in Saunderstown. Thank you for taking the time tonight and having all of us on this meeting. I sent an email out to all of you on Friday, and I appreciate Dr. Ogier getting back to me on Sunday. My biggest concern out of all of it, more so than anything, is the budget. The added cost onto the district. If we're going to set up a new district learning academy and the teachers that go along with that at almost $1 million, in addition to the monthly fees for cleaning, the increased cost for busing, the additional cost for PPE, because I'm assuming we're going to make sure all of the staff who work in the school have it. It makes me so concerned that we can't afford this now. What's it going to be like when my first grader goes into middle school or when he goes into high school? They will be feeling the effects of this budget for years. And all of this is occurring when the RIDE numbers are not known yet and funds are already low. I know there are benefits to in-person school, and I do not want to diminish those benefits by any means. However, those benefits seem to be short-term, whereas the long-term benefits that will be felt by everyone for years are sort of outweighing them. So I ask you to look towards what can be done to make distance learning the first option and only option for the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person I see is William Alexander.
Yeah, hi, my name is Bill. I live at 211 Earl Drive. And I would just like to say, when I was a kid, I was told, to always put some money away for a rainy day. And I would just say that if there is ever a rainy day, 2020 is the rainy day, right? So, if there's ever time to spend a little more to get the kids back into school than you would normally do, and then, start saving again afterwards, then 2020 is that year. Distance learning is not the same as in-person learning, and I think we need to do everything that we can to have our children, especially the high school students, back in person as much as possible in a safe manner. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Keith Mercado Lazarski.
Hi, my name is Keith Mercado Lazarski. I live at 673 Tower Hill Road. Good evening to committee members and administrators. Thank you for everyone's nonstop efforts. I know personally how some of you have worked really hard and how administrators and teachers across the state work really hard the entire summer. And, you're trying to plan for the best scenarios for students, staff, faculty, and the families. Now, this is a no-win situation. No matter what is chosen, there'll be unavoidable shortfalls. All right? As parents, we have to make some of the decisions on a much smaller scale, but the impacts are, kind of similar. As an educator and future potential administrator, we're charged with providing the best educational experience in the safest environment possible. The vast majority of us understand, including myself, we know that the best educational experience is in the school for most students. Absolutely. But the question is it the safest? And can we provide the safest environment? Because that's the most important variable that we deal with on a daily basis. My response would be that we don't know. The anecdotal evidence coming in from areas of the country that have already opened, including universities, have shown that educational settings with such large groups cannot be controlled in a safe manner. We're supposed to ensure the safety of everyone, not mitigate. You were supposed to try to mitigate the risk, but you can't do it to such a large scale. With that said, and with significant reservation, we're sending our kids back. My wife and I had struggled really hard. I joke about it online, and some of you who've read it. We did struggle with it. It was a very serious matter. Our work situation will not allow the flexibility to provide an educational experience that is even remotely positive for our kids. And I've gotten comments that I should just, quit, change jobs, stuff like that. But, I'm in my educational career. If I take a leave of absence, I risk losing it. And as most of us know, nobody's going to hire a phys ed health teacher after 3 or 4 years of experience. Administrators just don't make that kind of a decision in their budgets to hire people in my situations. I have to go back no matter what. And, as the concept of a safe pod, in my mind, that's a fallacy. The concept is out the window simply with the logistics of transportation. You have kids coming in on buses, that's, in a sense, its own environment, its own pod, but then they're going to all these different classrooms. There's no way to keep them separate. You could do 50% capacity, 33% capacity, whatever you want to do. The concept of a pod inside a school, it's a fallacy. Kids outside of school are participating in activities already, and the fall is only going to pick up more. The kids will be playing sports. So the idea of bringing kids who are not going to be exposed to outside factors and trying to keep them safe in the classroom, I just don't feel it's going to work. And of course, there's the money. We're spending a ton of money to try to mitigate these situations, but we don't even know our budgets. I know there's the rainy day fund. How much of that's going to be used for measures that we don't know if it's truly effective? And we're also going to be doing a lot of the learning in the classroom on computers anyway. So we're doing distance learning in person if we go back. So the experience, other than the actual interaction with the teacher in the classroom, will be pretty much the same. All right? And since we started distance learning in the spring, and it was a crash course, that's pretty much the baseline. We're only going to be improving that process going forward. And we know it's the safest option for the greatest number of people. All right? We have to try to work out those factors to improve those situations for those that it's not. We have to keep our students, faculty, staff, families, and administrators safe. That includes everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Rachel Rinaldi.
Hi, Rachel Rinaldi, 198 Glen Hill Drive in Saunderstown. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity for public comment on behalf of the school committee, and thank you to Dr. OJ for commenting and responding to some of my questions that I've had over the last few months, especially this week. So really, I just wanted the opportunity to just share some frustration around the communication that came this weekend on behalf of myself as well as several other parents that I've spoken to. Felt very rushed to have to force to make a decision within 5 days of the governor making her final recommendation to the schools. So there's definitely some frustration around that. Wondering why the rush on Sunday in the middle of the day to force people to make a decision by 8:00 p.m. without having the opportunity to really see what the in-person full plan would look like versus the distance learning academy in order to make an educated decision appropriately for our children. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Next person is Jason Walesko.
Hi, good evening, Jason Walesko, 225 Cole Drive. I just, with everything that's going on, there's obviously a lot of unknowns and potential concerns, and I feel that the district has given parents options, and I think at this point that is the best choice for families and the schools to work with, and I respect parents and family members that have concerns about personal health concerns or whatever it might be, or immune compromise, whatever it might be with their concerns involving their personal family. We've all been dealing with this pandemic in some way, shape, or form since the beginning. I think that the state is in a safe place overall. We've gone about our day for the most part, and we've accepted some form of normalcy. But I can tell you, based off working with my kids, taking time out of work last spring, and watching distance learning was a struggle for them. It was a struggle for them academically. It was a struggle for them emotionally. It was a struggle for them socially, not being around other people. And ultimately, in my opinion, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a politician, I'm not in your shoes, but at this point, I think that this is what's best for our kids, our students, our families, and if you have your own personal reservations, I understand that, I respect it, and that's where I think the district has the option for you. And I feel comfortable sending my kids back because I think ultimately that is what is best for these students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Kimberly Lanoe.
Hey there, Greg.
Hello.
Turn that on.
You're a little echoey. I don't know why.
Sorry, we have a echo in the chamber. So I just wanted to say, so sort of second what Jason just said, which is that I really appreciate that the school district has offered kids choices, that kids that don't feel comfortable going to school can stay home, kids that are ready and, healthy enough to go to school can go to school. As many of you know, I'm a teacher, and I feel strongly that teachers are safe, that the plans are safe for the kids to be in school. Oh, somebody else is jumping in.
You're all set.
And, our teachers have been out shopping, they've been at the beach, they've been in restaurants where our kids are working, so surely they can go back to school and teach. I'm disappointed to know that the plan may change and that I'm happy that you're going to offer in-person learning, it sounds like, for the high school. I know that plan's coming at the end of this conversation, but it sounds to me like the plan is maybe to offer in-person learning. I'm sorry it was too late for my son. It's disappointing that you waited so long to sort of pull in those rainy day funds. A lot of us made other choices based on the fact that we weren't going to be in school every day, but I'm very happy that the school is going to offer a better plan for our high school students and for the younger kids in 9 through 10 anyway, 9 through 11. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kara Martone.
Hi, Greg.
Hello.
Sorry about that. So it's Kara Martone. I live at 73 Woodridge Drive. And I just want to offer up my thanks as well to everybody involved, the administration, the school committee, the town council, for just continuing to work through all of these issues to try to get to a better plan. From what I understand, there's going to be other options presented at the end of the meeting tonight. I think I am in the position where I think for the high school kids in particular, everybody should be in school, right? And if they're not in school, they need synchronous learning. So they're not actually just teaching themselves. And this is something that I think a number of people have voiced all through the summer at all the various meetings we've had. And I think to be able to offer to families who don't feel comfortable going back a full distance learning is excellent. And if people want to choose that, they already chose it over the weekend. And for people who would like to go back, I think it's amazing if you're going to offer a better scenario than we've seen previously. And I think the governor had some amazing stats yesterday to talk about. Her new task force that she's got looking at just the facilities that each district has and whether or not the facilities are safe enough, and the fact that the state will be backing up any shortfalls in PPE and things like that, I think is amazing. So if we're in a position to start the school year that way, I think that's the way to go. I think that's awesome, because who knows what will happen in 4 months down the road. So if we can get the more time in front of the teachers that these kids can get, the better. So thank you. Thanks for including us, and we look forward to hear what's going on.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any more hands up, but I'll give another shout. Here's one, Sue Alexander.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, my name is Sue Alexander. I live at 211 Earl Drive. I just want to reiterate what a few people have also said on here. It's my understanding that the overwhelming majority of parents have chosen to send their kids back to school versus the Distance Learning Academy. And that to me, that speaks volumes, because the majority of parents in this town, the overwhelming majority of parents in this town, want their kids back in person. There is a much smaller percentage of parents who want their kids to do the Distance Learning Academy. So to me, it's kind of the best of both worlds. If we can offer that option where the kids whose parents don't feel comfortable sending them, then they have that choice and can do the distance learning. But to just possibly go all distance learning, is what I'm hearing through some rumors, I mean, that's like a slap in the face to 80-something% of parents who want their kids back in school. So as parents, as taxpayers, as voters, we have to look at that number and say, if we can make this work, if we can find the money that's needed, whether it be from the town council or CARES Act, we have to bring these kids back. And if these parents that don't want that, they have the option. If we go all distance learning, 80-something% of parents aren't going to be happy because it's not what they wanted. So I just think there's no comparison to in-person ever. Otherwise, teachers' jobs would become obsolete down the line if we didn't need in-person learning. I value the teachers. I value what they can give my kid in person, and it's much different than what they can give him through distance. So I would hope that the school committee could agree to the fact that, you know, if this can be done, this needs to be done, especially for the high school students. Thank you.
Thank you. Also have Courtney Riley.
Hi, I'm Courtney Riley. I live at 28 Beckett Lane. I would just like to say it was difficult making the decision the other day what to do for my child. I am an occupational therapist in another school district, and I do not yet know what we are doing, but I made the decision. Yesterday the governor spoke and said, in fact, that people will get sick. She knows full well that people are going to get sick, teachers, staff, students, and I just don't want to take that chance. Thank you.
Well, then you have a choice. Did you distance learn?
So next we have Will.
You're muted.
Sorry, thought I unmuted.
You got it.
Jill Sapala, my son hijacked my Zoom account, so it says Will. I'm at 239 Beacon Drive. I really appreciate, thank you to all of you, the school committee, Dr. Auger, I see Mrs. Hitchner's on here too. All of you are doing such an amazing job in such an incredibly difficult time in the history of, you know, our country, COVID. Very quickly, I do agree on several fronts with the feedback of other parents. Having to make this decision to go distance without having a lot of information was very difficult. And I did have the fortunate opportunity to speak with Dr. Auger, who was fantastic in giving me the information I needed. Mrs. Hitchner was able to supplement on some of the 504 questions I had. Really encourage you all, again, please keep the communication coming. Mrs. Shinak did an awesome job, I thought, starting to roll out things for parents to think about in the next 3 weeks. I think parent education, regardless if you go distance or in person, is going to be critical. If the parents, if we're not taking responsibility on ourselves to make sure we stay in the small groups, to make sure we're not getting ourselves sick with COVID and then sending our kids in, you know, this is where I think it's a joint partnership between the school committee and the parents, making sure everybody's taking responsibility, masking up, doing what we need to do in the next 2 weeks to make sure we can limit COVID. And then once we get into school, if our kids are sick, it's up to all of us, keep them home. Don't send them in with coughs, things like that. I know this is, I know there's budget, there's all sorts of facets you guys are looking at. I just want to say, you know, again, thank you for taking this so seriously. Thank you for trying to keep our kids safe. We know it's not going to be perfect, but appreciate everybody's efforts.
Thank you. Next hand I see, it just says Lisa. Oh, you were there for a second. Do you still want to?
Sorry, thank you.
Yep, you're there. Good. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Alda at 135 West Arlington Road. I would just like to tell everybody that I am not in favor of going back to school for our kids. I would love to have our kids home, at least for the first semester. We are going to do distance learning. I do think it's the safest way for the kids to all be together, but not have our community get infected as all of the students and parents could be infected as we go along. So I would just like to say that you guys are all doing a great job, but I am not in favor of our kids going back to school. And I also don't think that Hamilton is the location that our kids would be going to. I don't think that it can accommodate our kids and all the other kids, especially with fire and active shooters or kids, not having their masks on while they're eating, just safe overall for everyone. Those are huge concerns for myself, along with teachers coming and going. So I would just like to let you know that I'm in favor for the kids not going back to the school. Thank you.
Thank you. And Linda Olmsted?
Hi, my name is Linda Olmsted. I live at 242 Glen Hill Drive. So I just wanted to comment on the distant learning survey this past weekend. I was a bit surprised and frustrated to receive the text message and learn that if we choose Distant Learning Academy at a later date past the August 23rd deadline, then we will go onto a waiting list. So I just felt like the school was trying to force my hand without having the full, entire information presented to us, and I'm talking about the state plan. And I honestly don't really know much more about Hamilton's opening plan as well. I mean, I don't know how far apart the desks are going to be spread. I don't know how students are going to be in a classroom, that kind of thing. So you can understand that I can't truly make an informed decision until I have all the facts. There's just too many unanswered questions for me right now. For me, my top priority is the COVID testing and how it'll be implemented in the schools. The question is not if there will be a positive case in school, the question is when, and I need to know how the state and the schools are going to respond and handle the cases. So I'm just wondering if you would consider that you provide another time to opt into Distant Learning Academy when the state's plan for schools are released. So, for example, even if you give parents another 24 hours to decide, it allows me and other parents to make a better informed decision based on all the information. I mean, I am leaning towards the distance learning. I did not fill out the survey on Sunday. And now I have an added stress of not knowing what's going to happen to my son now that he's on this waiting list, and I still don't even know what that means. So, yeah, that's about it. But thank you for everything you're doing. I know that you guys have a tough job here. Thanks.
Thank you. Alyssa Smith?
Hi, I just want to say how thrilled I am that we have a better proposal on the table for the high school students. I think that their overall health and well-being is significantly improved by this plan. I think the drawbacks of them being at home are so numerous, and I'm thrilled that we have a better option put before us tonight. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up.
Greg, do you think you could remind people how to raise their hand?
If you don't know, again, it's in the participants tab, there's a button that says raise your hand. And if you are on a cell phone, dial in, you can hit *9. So I'll wait another moment just to give anybody an opportunity in case you came in late and didn't know how to do that. And I am not seeing any yet. All right, so thank you, everyone. I just want to mention, we did get an email from someone named Susan Erickson, who had correspondence. She mentioned she wouldn't be able to make it to citizens' comments tonight. I did make sure that that was circulated to all the members of the school committee, and I'll also get that to our clerk in our files and record. So next, we have the superintendent's report, so I'll turn things over to Dr. Roger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blasball. Sorry, I'm looking for... Okay, Mike, is that working now?
Please see your screen.
Okay. All right, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you. Let me just kind of clear myself out of here so I can see what I'm doing. So thank you for all the comments tonight. I just want to reiterate how proud I am of, the leadership team at the high school. We have been working, nonstop to deal with, the really a lot of changing guidelines that we're getting from the state. I guess I would say evolving. The state is evolving in their leadership and in their guidelines to us, and we're considering different ideas all the time. What I'd like to do tonight is to talk a little bit about a few things. One, about the high school schedule. Some people mentioned that I'm proposing a new plan for the high school. That is not necessarily correct. I'm looking to explain what we have at the high school, and I know Mr. Jones, for one, asked that we do that and talk about, what possibilities. I know he would like to discuss that, as part of our discussion tonight. But also, I want to talk about, our Distance Learning Academy and about what we plan to, how we plan to organize that, how we plan to pay for that, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot going on here. This is going to take a little while, but I'd like to at least briefly begin by looking at the high school schedule, and I would invite Dr. Morse, I know she's on this Zoom meeting with us, to talk a little bit about, the schedule that we have and why the decisions were made at the high school. Dr. Morse, you want to talk a little bit about these two slides?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So there was a lot of questions about why we split the high school into the 4x4 plan for the semester, with day one being all of semester one and day two being all of semester two. So we wanted to clarify that a little bit. In order to have a day one, day two schedule and split the student body in half, which we needed to do for the social distancing requirements, it would require a 4-day rotation. So instead of having day 1A, day 1B, day 1A, day 1B, it would be day 1A, day B1, day A2, day B2, and in all of that confusion, also rotating 7 or 8 classes for the kids. So in essence, if your student had math on Monday, they would see the teacher again on Friday and then not again until the following Thursday. So all in all, in person would be about 5 times a month. And so that just seemed like too much of a slide for us between classes. It's also easier for students and parents to keep track of a A-B day than the 4-day kind of rotation. Students can focus on 3 or 4 classes at a time, which we know is better for them if they're going to be in a distance learning model. Reduced preps helps the faculty better adjust to the teaching. They're adjusting to this new model. And we believe it serves at-risk populations better than the day 1, day 2 split. It helps students focus. Students with executive functioning issues, the fewer they're juggling for classes, the better. And very importantly, it means fewer overall contacts for all the students and staff. They're being exposed to 50 to 75 people instead of 125 people, 100 to 125 people over a 2-day period. We know there are some drawbacks to that. So the gaps in the sequence courses like math, world language, reading, and writing, where they might have math or English in the first semester, but not again until the following year in the fall. So we're looking at kids' schedules. That can be mitigated a bit by having what we call paired classes. For instance, math and science use a lot of the same skills. The math is reinforced in the science class. So if they have those in opposite semesters, that's a good thing. And the same thing goes for English and social studies. Aside from that, we have things we can reinforce IXL. We have the summer packets that we always do in the summer to help them refresh their skills. And for the AP students who were concerned about also, we have AP seminar that we're putting in place to help the students look at that material either ahead for second semester or keep it fresh during the second semester if they had before the first semester. College Board themselves is recognizing that a lot of schools are struggling with this, and they've put out all of their lessons for AP for every course on YouTube. And although the teachers, AP teachers won't be teaching in the off semester for those students, they will be available to assist students with their AP seminars. That's what the students choose to do. On the next slide, so factors affecting the release time. So once we decided what the AP schedule was going to be, we needed to look at the hourly schedule for the day. And I know a lot of parents have said things, well, if you fix the transportation, if you fix the lunches, if you know, it's not just one thing, it's a combination of a lot of things that are working together. Transportation for the 1:30 release would require 6 more buses. Serving lunch for us is one of the huge factors. For a full day lunch, it's logistically implausible, if not impossible, to have all of our students have lunch during the day, even when we split the student body in half. Having 750, or even if, you know, distance learning kids are some, 100 or so fewer, it still would require 4 lunches, spreading them all over the building, and 10-minute intervals for cleaning, which we're told by the cafeteria staff is not nearly enough time to safely clean all of the desks and chairs and things that should be done properly. If we make that cleaning time longer, that makes the lunch period longer, it makes all the other classes shorter, and it just throws the whole day out of balance. So the best we could do is 20-minute lunches with a 10-minute cleaning, and that just isn't good protocol for this. And then they'd have to hire the extra staff for the food service, even without thinking about the cleaning time. Class time for 12 p.m. release is reduced from the normal day, and we know that. But all of the class periods are equal to each other, and that hour they're losing, they make up when they have their distance learning the next day. They're available to talk to their teachers for an hour at the end of the day and get that extra instruction or extra help that they could normally get in the class time. So overall, not a lot of time, and of course the other half hour is lunch, because they're not doing lunch in the building, they're doing that at home. So we feel like this is the best plan we can come up with, considering all of the variables that we have to take into consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Morse. So I want to point out that I know, Mr. Jones had some questions for me about this, and with the possibility of, we have an agenda item tonight where we can discuss this further. But, a change, for instance, going to an 8-period schedule would be pretty difficult for us to do at this point, not impossible. But, I know the question was asked, if the high school were, by the governor's order, to go to, distance learning for all, and that order were a year-long order, in that case, we probably would, very much consider going to an 8-period schedule. But without that, it's hard to make that consideration. And I know that there'll probably be some other questions from the committee about, some options for the high school. I just wanted to lay out, again, what kinds of factors that we have. The busing piece is very big, and we were hoping for better results from, the increased capacity on buses that came out a couple of weeks ago. We're just really having a difficult time, even at half, 50% of the students coming in and trying to do a shared run with the middle school. So I'm going to have part of an announcement about how our busing schedule may be changing in the next few days, and we'll follow up with some communication to all families, just because we're really experiencing a difficult time making sure everyone who wants a ride on a bus gets one. And so there's a lot to this, and a lot of it has to do with distance learning. So I would like to talk a lot about this tonight, and then, follow up with conversations with the committee on, any options that they want to take regarding distance learning or regarding, any of our schedules, including the high school. So We, over the weekend, have approximately 800 students who told us that they are interested in distance learning. This includes a waiting list that we currently have, and 300 of those students are elementary students. So that translates for us when you look at it from classroom to classroom. And I will show you before this presentation is out an actual listing of where all of our in-person classrooms stand right now. What that means is that there currently we would be running 16 elementary distance learning classrooms. If you remember from my presentations before, the distance learning for the middle and high school are more connected to the actual classes they would be taking in school. So in respect to scheduling, that makes things a lot easier. If a student needs to be out, there would still be a connection to the teacher who's in the school. And we have some protocols about that, but I'm going to focus tonight on the elementary piece where we've decided to set up a distance learning academy, which means we're creating essentially a school that is bigger than two of our schools normally. Forest Park and Fishing Cove, for instance, this school would be bigger than the two of those, with 16 elementary classrooms happening. Unfortunately, to do that right now, you know, in our preparation through the spring and into the summer, we have 3 unassigned budgeted teachers. So these are people who are already in our budget, already have a job with us, already have been teaching for us. But right now, we're just kind of waiting to see where to assign them. And we normally do this in August, kind of wait to see where that last minute enrollment tends to spike, and that's where we would create the last minute classes. So where we are right now is that those 3 are still available. But that obviously presents a problem for the other 13. So I have 3 options for the committee tonight, and I will you know, make a proposal at the end about which option that I would prefer. But then obviously it's up to the committee. So option 1 is to hire 13 new elementary classroom teachers. And like I said, we have 3 and we need 16 in all. The pros of doing this is that all of the in-school students stay in their current classroom. There's no disruption at all to the current classrooms that we have. And in the in-school classrooms, because, you know, roughly 20% of the students in those rooms have elected distance learning, that means, now there are some outliers here, but overall, when you look at the list of, you know, classes in just this model, you would be looking at about 13 to 18 in a room. And obviously, with dealing with COVID, we would want classrooms that, you know, are not at the usual capacities, which for many elementary classrooms can be as high as 26. They start at 19 for K, they move to 24 in the next few grades, and then 26, I think, is grades 3 through 5. So, you know, obviously, if there's a way that we can make those numbers lower, we would prefer to do that. The cons of this plan are, you know, we're about 2.5 weeks away from the beginning of school right now, and hiring 13 teachers is an enormous task. Normally, in any given year, we're probably looking at hiring at the elementary level a few, maybe 5 total, and we have all summer to do it. So this would be very difficult to do by the 14th, not to mention, you know, making sure they're well trained and ready to go with all of these systems, you know, the LMS and everything else that we're going to need them to be doing. So there could be quite an adjustment period where we're relying on subs, and even with that, subs are not easy to find right now either. And just hiring 13 people outright, you're looking at approximately $1.2 million in unbudgeted funds. People have, you know, come to the mic tonight and have recognized that, you know, in the spring, the school department was originally looking for about $3 million. We found out we were going to get a generous amount of state aid like never before, and heard that to about a $1.8 million request. The town council was able to come through with $90,000. So we started significantly behind in that regard, but also that state aid that was supposed to be so generous. Can I ask people to mute your microphone, please? So that state aid still has not come in. That's about $1.2 million, I think, is something along those lines that we were kind of hoping for. And that number has not been made known to us in the school department, nor has the number, that we can depend on from the federal government. So we're behind in funding, and now to take on an additional $1.2 million in unbudgeted funds is obviously a real deterrent to a plan like this. Plan number 2. We could transfer existing staff where possible from in-person classrooms. The pro on that is that we do have 9 staff that if we look at, so let's say I'll use this example, or let's say I'm looking at the 4th grade at Hamilton Elementary and I have 3 classrooms with 20 students in them apiece. If 10 of those students decide they want to go distance learning, and I decide that we're going to use one of those teachers to be a distance learning teacher, there are still 50 students in the building. So the remaining 2 classes become classes of 25. So instead of creating more space in the in-person classroom, what this is just done in this particular case, not every case, but in this particular case, it would actually increase the number of students in, that in-person classroom. And therefore, you can see when we look at the data and how this affects the in-person classes, that this actually brings that grouping up from like 18 to 24. And again, when I say these, if your class happens, when this all comes out, whatever plan we pick, and your class is like a 16 or a 17 or a 25 or 26, I just want you to know most of the classes in this range are somewhere between 18 and 24. So there's a lot of variation there. But it's a higher variation than the one we had for option 1. Another con for this, it could be a pro because you're not spending $1.2 million, but you are still spending approximately $300,000 because we'd still have to hire at least 4 teachers to make this work. We have 3 available, we have 9 that we could move, and we would need 4 more at least to make this work. So the third option, and this is something that we've been brainstorming for the last few days, is a pretty creative idea, and I'm sure a lot of people will see this as kind of a radical idea, but that's the kind of thinking that we're going to need right now to creatively problem solve. So we would be looking in this plan to temporarily relocate Forest Park students. We would have Forest Park students reassigned to Quidnessett and to Fishing Cove, and the LEAP program, which is about 10 students, special education program, would move to Stony Lane. What this would allow us to do is it would allow us to use all of the Forest Park staff to blend with mostly at Quidnessett and some with Fishing Cove to accomplish what we need to accomplish there. We would have additional staff, a principal, for instance, that could oversee the Distance Learning Academy, an extra nurse, who we know we're going to need that. We'll have special educators, TAs, clerical staff, custodians. We will also have, after all of the distance learning classes are covered, by some of them by, those who are leaving classrooms in the building, but many of them covered by, the staff at Forest Park. It's not really that staff. They would go into a job placement program, and people would bid on whichever jobs were available. So it may be that a Forest Park person moves to a distance learning job, or it may be that a Forest Park person simply just moves with their students to Quidnessett, and they're still teaching the same curriculum, just in a different location. But even after all of that is done, we would still have 1 additional teacher to offset any high class numbers that are at Hamilton or Stony Lane. And I will show you that not all classes are very low. Some of them are still up, 24, 25, or 26 in a room, which during COVID-19, we really want to keep those numbers lower. So for Fishing Cove and Quid, their numbers now are roughly like 17 to 21 range, which is a little bit better actually than option 2. It still doesn't affect Stony Lane and Hamilton as much, but at least for those schools, even Quid, even with adding Forest Park students, those 2 schools would be roughly a little lower in terms of, their usual population in the school. In some cases, significantly lower than the usual population in their school, because we have so many distance learning students. So you can kind of consolidate, make better efficiencies, and actually find a way to get this done. And this will cost no money to the district. So it will also, because now you're getting rid of one of the school's runs, the Forest Park students would now be bused either to Fishing Cove or to Quid. So those runs already exist. We believe that we could do this a little bit faster. Quidnesset was chosen as the primary location to take this on because they reduced quite significantly with the distance learning. So there's a pretty low population there right now, about 150. So there's a lot of capacity to use the building. It's also a building because they have, the partitions and not hard walls. That allows us to really get creative and try to space kids out as much as possible, more so than obviously what would be allowed to us, with Forest Park. And it's just a bigger building with more capacity for more kids. And it is newer, and so there's a lot of benefit to picking that building instead of sending a lot of other kids maybe over to Forest Park, for instance. It allows for better social and emotional support from our mental health staff because they'll be more consolidated, at that particular building, and they'll be able to service, all of the in-person kids and the kids in distance learning from those two schools. So it would really be kind of a combination, Forest Park and Quidnesset Elementary School, housed temporarily for this year at Quidnesset, and some of the students housed temporarily for this year at Fishing Cove. So right now I want to break from this, and I want to show you how things would shake out at our schools. So if you notice, I'm going to start with the Quidnesset line because that's the school that gets affected the most. Notice at Forest Park, there's no students under this plan because those students would mostly be moving to Quidnesset. Even under this Quidnesset plan, you'll notice that the numbers are pretty good,
We don't see your spreadsheet if that's what you're trying to show us.
Oh, okay.
To interrupt there.
I apologize. Not sure how I could, hold on.
It might be, Phil, that you're, or Dr. OJ, that you're sharing a window, not a screen.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I apologize, everybody, if you could bear with me. I'm just not sure how to pull this up, to tell you the truth. I thought it would show up on my screen, and it's not doing that. So, Waterman, can you offer me any assistance?
Absolutely. Why don't you stop the share?
Okay. All right, can go back.
And reshare your screen.
Okay, all right, great. I think I got it. Is that better?
Yes, now we have your spreadsheet. Thank you.
Okay, great. So once again, I'm going to start with the third line here. You can see the second line, Forest Park, there's no students listed right now. So under this plan, you'll notice that the grades at Quidnesset average out. We start with students, then there's the number of teachers to service those students, and there's a student-teacher ratio. So we would like that to be as low as possible, and I mentioned earlier that these can go relatively high, up to 26 or so. So we have a pretty modest number there at Quidnesset, even with these conditions. And at Fishing Cove, you can also see the numbers are pretty modest. Keeping them with the highest group being at 22 is a pretty good way to be right now. Of course, it's all relative, and you want, as low numbers as you could possibly get. But for our purposes, this is a pretty good deal. Let me go to the other schools here. So Hamilton has a couple of low classes on the early grades, but in the upper grades, there are some higher ones, especially that 25.5. That means there's one class with 25 students and one with 26, and that is the third grade. And then the fourth grade, there's a class with 23. And then at Stony Lane right now, there are 3 classes that are in the range that I would want to address. So, and you can see right now that with the Distance Learning Academy, the numbers are pretty modest. These, again, on this level can go up to 26 or so, and this 13 could go all the way up to 19. And again, remember, you've got 3 sections of this now, so that means you have room for approximately 18 kids to join kindergarten distance learning before we have to get to another section. So there's a generous amount of room in these. Somebody asked tonight, they know they're on the waiting list. We have, I don't know this for certain, Mr. Waterman, you may want to chime in. I think we have about 50 people already on a waiting list. And because of these numbers for the Distance Learning Academy, we do see that we're going to be able to honor just about every one of those requests, which means that the numbers that I'm showing you for the in-person in school is only going to reduce. We don't know specifically where, and there are other factors as well. There are still students registering for school, believe it or not, even this week. And so, there's some up and down, but, with about, that many students on a waiting list, we definitely see there's a possibility to create more, breathing room, literally, in some of our elementary classrooms. So I'm going to stop this share right now. Actually, you know what? I think I may want to pull it back one more time. I want to talk about this particular line with Forest Park. So the teachers under this plan at Forest Park would participate in staffing at Fishing Cove with their students. They would, for the special education program, they would, those staff would be at Stony Lane, doing the same work that they're doing at Forest Park. And the remaining teachers would follow, many of the remaining teachers would follow their students to Quidnesset, or take on other positions around the district. Hold on. I'm having a hard time with the waiting screen, like, my own screen is getting blocked by people telling me there's someone in the waiting room. So Quidnesset, so that those teachers would go to those spots, and after all of those things are addressed, and utilizing the staff from the different schools and filling the holes that we need to have filled, they would cover for us everything that we need for the distance learning needs. So all of that would be taken care of at no cost. Not $300,000, not $1.2 million. Also, what would become available is one general education teacher that's still unassigned. So when you look around the district and I see, for instance, grade 3 at Hamilton that has a 25 and a 26, I would want to start by putting that teacher there. That would make 3 sections, and it would reduce that number down to a nice 17 in a room. And that would help with social distancing and so on and so forth. And so, that would be a big help. We would also gain, a .8 special education teacher. We'd gain a principal who could help us with the distance learning work and help around the district for the other principals. I've always felt elementary principals should have an assistant, for instance, to help with the administrative tasks. This would be a great help to us to share some of that workload for them. There will be a clerk available, and that clerk can be assigned to help oversee the Distance Learning Academy with that principal. There's an extra .5 clerk. There's an extra nurse that could certainly help out in our schools, particularly if there's a nurse that can't come in one day. But I'm sure, we're dealing with these very unique times that nurses are a priority. So to have one available to help around the district is a big help. There are, believe it or not, there are 3 custodians on 3 different shifts at Forest Park. That will help us around the district and save us some money where, if we can reduce or if we can just utilize them in different places. There's 1/3 of a social worker. There's 1/2 of a psychologist that would be available for reassignment around the district, and there are 8 teachers' assistants that are currently at Forest Park that would now be available to us. So we would have, in this time where, we're really worried about, money, and we're really worried about staffing, this would be kind of a luxury to us to have these kinds of staff available to us to address needs around the district, wherever they may be. It may not be at Quidnesset or Fishing Cove. It may be at Hamilton or Stony, or it may be in one of our middle schools or at the high school. And regardless, trust me, we need people, to help us. So that would be a really great, option here. Now, I completely understand that, hold on, if I can get back to my other screen now. All right. I'm gonna not share, and then I'm gonna go back to sharing again, see what happens. Yeah, I'm not able to get back to my initial screen, Mike. I apologize again, I don't know why this is occurring, but we had it down today. Mike, did he help, did I get out again?
You want your PowerPoint? I can present it for you.
You want to put that up?
Yep.
Appreciate it. And if you could go to the last two slides. While Mr. Waterman is doing that, I totally understand that this is a pretty radical idea. We're looking at, relocating a whole roughly 180 to 190 students who are still the in-person group that would be at Forest Park. It would not be a permanent thing. This is not a closure of the school. In fact, the school building itself, I would propose that we use that to house the people who are teaching distance and, need a location to do that. If a teacher is not, someone who needs to be quarantined themselves, right now we are looking at a situation where, can you pull up the slideshow, Mike? You have to enable the editing. Oh, can I do that? I think you need to do it, Mike. Okay, so if you could go to the next slide, please. So, I would think that it would be important to do this at a separate meeting. I just proposed that just because obviously there are a lot of people in the community. Most people in the community did not know that this is coming tonight. So I certainly want to hear from the Forest Park community how they feel about this. And before, a final vote is taken by the school committee on this. But my feeling is, as much as I would love to propose option number 1, $1.2 million is a whole new ballgame in terms of the financial commitment that would be required. I just don't see that being optimal here, especially since for, $0, we could, utilize our resources better, address our students' needs better, a couple more students in the classroom than the other model, but with what we get with additional staff being available to us. And I would also ask, as part of this proposal, that the school committee allow me to increase by 2 unbudgeted teacher positions. So that when we see areas, that would allow for 3 now, because I already have 1 within this plan design. That would give me 3 places where I could, do that kind of work. Find an area that, sometime next week we notice that it is especially high, and that we could plug in another teacher at that particular school, whether it's at Hamilton, Stony, Fishing Cove, or Quidnesset, and make that a smaller, set of classrooms where people can spread out a little bit more and have a little bit more breathing room. I think that would be important, and that way and that's only if needed. So that way the financial commitment from the district is relatively low. 2 teachers, given everything that we're dealing with right now, I think that's a reasonable kind of request right there. So I just want to continue to keep you updated on other reopening items. The governor's announcement for reopening is for a scenario is going to come August 31st. But I want to clarify something that came to light to me from a lot of people who were asking about distance learning, and they asked, and I think someone asked about this tonight, that, shouldn't we wait to hear what the governor says before, having to make a decision about distance learning or not? And the reason that I would say no to that is because the governor's decision is a temporary decision. She's going to make a decision and say, we're going to open in a certain scenario. I don't know if it's going to be, the district's full plan or their partial plan or limited plan or full distance learning. I don't know that yet. But whatever it is, her plan is temporary. She will say, this is the way we're going to start. And she reserves the right that within a few weeks, a few months, whatever conditions happen to come our way in Rhode Island or in any particular district, that she may reverse that and pick another scenario. We may start in full, and then, there could be a spike in the North Kingstown community or in all of Rhode Island, and all of a sudden she says, all right, we're going to go to distance learning. So in the request that someone would make to us right now, you would know that you have a distance learning class commitment from us for the entire first semester. That is solid, no matter what the rest of the district does. You know who your teacher is. You know you're going to get the North Kingstown curriculum. You know there's going to be one person focused completely on your kids at home and not having to focus on the kids in school and at home at the same time, at least part of the elementary plan. So it is different than the governor's announcement, which is a temporary thing. It may last for the first semester. It may last for a week or two. We just don't know. So there's also, and someone mentioned this tonight, the Department of Health has an educational operations committee. That was just announced by the governor yesterday. Still, the district does not know a heck of a lot about that. We have a meeting with our team that is assigned to us on Thursday, and we will be talking with them. My understanding is that they have some expertise in the facilities and will be, in-person support to us to help us with kind of a checklist about, do you have an isolation room? Show us your building and how, you're having the kids maneuver through the building and what kinds of things you're doing with social distance in your classroom. And they, have, one set of standards that are going to come from the state and make sure that we're following those standards. So that's a real help to us because, as you know, sometimes guidelines can be a little fuzzy and interpreted differently by different people. So, so that's something that, we're really happy to have. And, even if it is this late in the game, it's still good to have it. The other item has to do with bus logistics, schedules and school start times. These are still under review. Last time I spoke to you, we had just gotten new numbers for bus capacity from the state, and I mentioned that even with those, it's very difficult for us with the high school and the middle schools. So right now, I'm mentioning that, our plan looks like it's going to evolve, that the high school in Wickford would still be 7:15, but we may have to move Davisville Middle and to join Hamilton. So the Hamilton time wouldn't change. The only one that's actually changing here from our original plan is Davisville Middle, and they would go back to an 8 o'clock start time. And the reason for that is just that it allows us to use half of our fleet in the southern part of town for Hamilton, the other half for Davisville, and we can make that work in a more timely way. Whereas the high school in Wickford, we do anticipate there might be some Wickford kids who are coming in on high school buses. Those schools are near to each other, so we could make that run work a little bit more quickly. But it just underscores another problem that we referred to at the beginning of this presentation, that the high school busing on the way home, really, we're having a very difficult time. It's just impossible for us to make that work at the same time as the middle schools. And so that's a real block for us in terms of, that longer day. We also feel it's important that the way we designed the high school schedule, just to get back to that and kind of come full circle right now, that piece of the high school schedule where we have that office hour with our staff is really critical. Because, as you know, our plan has, students at home every other day. It's good that they're seeing their teachers every other day, and we really wanted that piece to happen, so I'm glad we made that happen. But on the day that they're home, it's really important that they could have some communication with their teachers. So that office hour really, provides the opportunity to do that on a regular basis. It's not dependent on, whether the teacher decides on their own to, get back to your child in an email at night or, late in the afternoon. It's going to happen as part of the school day. And I think that's really important to have that consistency. So, so that kind of takes me full circle. We will, of course, come out with more firm communication about these times and probably about a whole bunch of things that seem to continue to evolve for us in the next few weeks. People have mentioned, we're hearing a lot from the superintendent, but not so much from our schools. That is starting to change now. You're going to hear more from your principals about the actual protocols in your schools and how they plan on making things work. There is so much to talk about, and I could probably go on and on all night long, but I'm going to stop there and move on with the rest of the agenda. You've gotten certainly plenty for tonight from me, and I know there's going to be a lot more discussion when we talk about certain options as we move later in the agenda. So thank you, Mr. Blasball.
Thank you. So just for folks at home and members of the committee, so what we're going to do now after Dr. J's report is we're going to go through our regular agenda. It's relatively short and mostly straightforward, at which point we have another agenda item, which is the school committee's discussion of the presentation that Dr. Ajay just had and comments. I know there are a number of members who have things that they want to bring up and discuss, so we'll do that then. So moving on to our routine items section of the agenda, if I could ask for a motion to seal the executive session minutes of August 25th, 2020.
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Hildebrand.
Second.
A second from Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously, and I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. Any members have any items they'd like to exempt from the consent agenda?
Can we remove D?
I was going to say D1. I definitely want to. That's on my list.
D1.
So then, if I could ask for a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items.
So moved.
From Ms. Hoskins.
Second.
And a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't hear, sorry, raise your hand, Bob. Okay, gotcha, thanks. And Ms. Hoskins, did you? Aye?
Aye.
Yes, okay, just checking. Sorry, it's so hard to fix. Okay, so that's unanimous. And then next, we have exempted item D1. So Dr. Day, I was going to exempt this as well. It's just not entirely clear what you're asking us to approve. I just want to make sure we're crystal clear on that.
Okay, I'm looking at my own agenda right now. D1.
That's the approval of unbudgeted positions. You mentioned it briefly in your presentation.
Okay, yeah.
I wanted to
right.
crystal clear.
Okay, so this this was put as a placeholder in the event that we are, and I think it's obviously related to the new business item, the reopening plans and potential options. So maybe these are two items that are tabled there. This one's tabled. We could kind of do them together. If, for instance, the school committee decides to pick option 1 from tonight's presentation or option 2, I would need an authorization from the school committee to, have, whatever you designate in terms of, unbudgeted funding to hire more staff. If that third option that it requires the relocating of students from Forest Park, if that is the choice, then it may want to be put off, or obviously it wouldn't need unbudgeted funding to do it. So I think the two are related.
And it's part of the larger discussion later?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table item D1. If I could have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So that item is tabled for later consideration. Next, if I can get a motion to approve item E, which is the NEA-NK Memorandum of Agreement.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins. Second. Second from Ms. Hildebrand. So let me just sort of kick this off by, I want to thank Dr. Jay and the administration, as well as the members of the negotiating team, for spending an extraordinary amount of time working on this. For members of the public, what this is it essentially sets forth our agreement in the union, with the union rather, for what are essentially a whole bunch of, changes and responsibilities that are very, very, very different from what a member of the teachers union normally has to work with in an ordinary school year. We all know that this is very much not an ordinary school year. I want to thank the union and negotiating team for recognizing that and working with the administration on what we need to get done in order to make this all happen. And a lot of work went into it, and I can't thank you all enough. A lot of good work was done there. Any other comments or questions on that? Then if not, if I could...
Mr. Blasberg, I'd just like to thank Sue Warburton and the union negotiating committee. It was a long session, and a lot of legitimate concerns on both sides, and a lot to work out. And I appreciate their patience and working with us. And I think we came to a nice agreement. So thank you.
And then Mr. Jones.
Yeah, thank you. I just, because I'm sure lots of members of the public would actually like to know what's in the MOA, but at least one element, which I know has been discussion among many parents, is that if we are in the full distance mode in a district or in a school or a classroom, the teaching will be synchronous and follow the school schedule.
That's correct.
Yeah, and the major feature of the MOA, and this is why, some of the distance learning decision-making, took a while, and the ability for parents to opt into distance learning is because it involved the distance learning piece. How does that work at the elementary level? How does it work at the middle and high level? So those were the kinds of details that were ironed out with this MOA.
And Ms. Hildebrand, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just trying to point out that Bob did.
Okay. You were pointing this way. He's down on my screen, so I'm sorry. Get the Brady Bunch grid right. Okay. So any other questions or comments? We had a motion and a second. Okay. Ms. Healy, we did have a motion and a second, right? I recall we did. Okay, good. Thank you. So all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Mrs. Warburton will bring that to the union as a whole, and we hope that we have their support as well. So next, anything on, do we have Mrs. King back? Mrs. King lost power during that thunderstorm that ran through.
And I am here
You're back.
my husband ran out and set up our generator, so I'm back up, but I got very limited lighting here, but I am here.
Okay, well, thank you for taking one for the team. So anything on the 2019-20 school budget?
No.
2021?
No.
And CIP bond, existing future bond?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. So item D is our mask policy. So first of all, I'm going to mention, I think we can have a bit of discussion on this tonight. I don't think that we are, there's so much that's changing, with respect to guidelines and just comments that we have gotten from members of the, I don't think that we are ready to approve a version of this yet. I think we've got a bit more work to do and some changes to make to that policy, because it all feeds into so much of what we're doing right now. So we wanted to have that out there to give a lot of people the opportunity to comment. We've read all those comments, and we're working on incorporating that into changes that we bring forward at a future meeting. But for discussion purposes, anyone want to have any comments on the current version of the proposed mask policy?
I do have quite a bit to say, if that's all right. I did send an email to the rest of the school committee, but I just wanted to reiterate that to the public, just so that people understand where where I stand. First of all, I agree entirely with the purpose and the philosophy of the mask policy. I think it's incredibly important, absolutely critical for our kids if they go back to school to be wearing a mask at all times. I want to take a couple of seconds and state some concerns I have about the proposed policy. I'm speaking as a dad of 2 kids at Hamilton Elementary School, and also as a slightly nerdy architect who likes numbers. And so the examples I'm going to give and the calculations I'm going to talk about are specific to Hamilton, because that's the school that I know, but I suspect that they apply across the board. So first, the average classroom at Hamilton is less than 700 square feet. They actually vary between like 694 to 701 square feet. That's the nerdy stuff. And if each child in a classroom during any, and in this policy it refers to exceptions, mask wearing exceptions, which would be eating, drinking, or mask breaks. So in a classroom setting, if each classroom during any one of these mask breaks or mask wearing exceptions is any child, if every child is contained within their own 6-foot bubble, this means that each child would need approximately 113 square feet, pi times r squared. And this means that each classroom could accommodate 5 children and 1 adult with their masks off. If we make the argument and push it a little bit farther, that each child really only needs 4 feet, assuming that their bubbles can overlap and still maintain 6 foot of separation, each child would need approximately 50 square feet. And in this scenario, each classroom could accommodate up to 13 children and 1 teacher during lunch or any other mask-wearing exception. And to push it even farther, if we go and assume that each child around the perimeter of the room would have their backs against the wall and they would only need 4 feet radius on one side of them, they could potentially squeeze in 19 children and 1 teacher. And these calculations assume that each child's body only takes up 1 square foot of room, which is a little unrealistic, that they're evenly spaced throughout the classroom and that no furniture interrupts the spacing, and that each child remains in their designated spot without moving 1 inch. And the reason I go to the length of even mentioning all of this is to help make the point that lunch, drinking, or any other mask break in a full classroom of students is completely unrealistic. It's impossible, given that our capacities are proposed to remain about the same, and in some instances they're going to be lower, but certainly not low enough to accommodate a mask-wearing exception in a classroom. Given the governor's current mandates for masks in our school. So if classrooms aren't a safe place for children to eat their lunch, we need to define what, and in this policy it says large room, what a large room is, where the large rooms are, and how that would happen. At Hamilton, we've got 400 and, I don't know exactly the numbers, I do have them written down somewhere. But, there's 341 students in the building. And the current proposal is to have 2 lunch periods. If we make an even, 175 students per lunch period, that's just a tremendous amount of space, knowing that it can't happen in the classroom. Anyways, I say all that because I have major reservations about approving a policy that is not possible to implement. That's all I have to say right now.
Okay, thanks. Any other members want to comment, or Dr. Ajay?
Yeah, I'll be happy to comment. So, Mr. Mather, I definitely get your point. I don't have an answer for you right now, certainly not with all the right math for you. But I am going to go back to this with our principals and work on our ideas about this. I will report back the next time we meet. I also will take the opportunity in this week's sessions that we have superintendents and school leaders have opportunities to meet directly with the commissioner. This week there is a meeting that includes medical people and people about like ventilation will come up and other issues along these lines. So I'm sure it'll probably be asked not just from us, but if it isn't, I'll make sure that I ask about these things and get the latest from them for you.
Thank you.
I'm curious to, you mentioned that you have a meeting on Thursday, that there's the potential of some folks coming in and doing walkthroughs of buildings, and that might be a place where they can offer us some expert advice on how to make this happen. Because I mean, I think Jake for like doing the math, because that's not my strong suit. Because it makes a huge impact, and when you start to think about it in that kind of way, I think that it definitely throws up a bunch of red flags.
And so I just want the whole community to know that this is an area where, the guidance has definitely evolved. When we first started out, people from the Department of Education were telling us that basically if you're in that pod, that they were telling us you don't even have to wear a mask at all. And that was, a few months ago. So at this point, Governor Raimondo has changed her position on that, and everyone has followed suit, learning from the medical experts, which is a good thing. But we're kind of getting this news just recently and adapting ourselves. So we're going to have to figure out a way to make at least eating work, and finding those opportunities where people can be socially distanced enough that there are some points where you don't have to wear a mask during the day.
Okay, thank you. So we should make a formal motion to table this item for now. So if I could ask a motion to table item D1.
So moved.
Mr. Mather, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Graham, all in favor of tabling? Aye. Aye. Any noes? So passes unanimously to table item D. So we will be working on that and revisiting it. We know it's not quite ready, so we'll be coming back and vote on that again in the future. So next we have new business. So essentially this is here for an opportunity for school committee members to ask any questions of Dr. Ajay based on his presentation, to discuss the options that were just put in front of us. I want to make it clear to members of the public that the scenarios that you just laid out are, I cannot stress enough that everything changes day to day. It's so frustrating for those of us, whether it's the administration, whether it's the members of the teachers union on our negotiating committee, whether it's members of the school committee. We have been going all summer working on sets of guidelines, and then as soon as you have it figured out, those guidelines change. Sometimes they change to make things easier, sometimes they're changing to make things harder, but they all affect the plans that you put in place. And so the latest new information that we have that's really driving this is the number of distance learning people who have opted for the distance learning option. We were committed as a school committee to provide those parents who are not comfortable sending their children to school with an option. And we've done everything we can, and the administration is working very, very hard to put a excellent distance learning option in place for those parents. And we're trying essentially to run two parallel school departments right now. We have a whole plan and a whole system for in-school learning. And we have a not completely separate, but a separate group of teachers and protocols and way of teaching for a whole separate subset of kids. And that's not an easy, I see Dr. Jacobs, sorry, that's not an easy lift, and it's taking a lot of work, and I applaud you for all the work you're putting into it. So I don't want people on the public to think that, we're springing these giant surprises on people. It's just that the data comes in with these numbers for distance learning, providing different options, and we need to examine all of those. The most important thing I want to say is we're not going to make a decision tonight. We don't make a decision as broad as some of the options that were proposed today on a dime without giving members of the public the opportunity to at least hear that the proposal is in play and have an opportunity to comment. That being said, we have limited amount of time here. I mean, things have to happen very, very quickly. So we're going to need to poll the school committee members. I know, one of the very few exceptions to when the school committee members can talk about something outside of an open meeting, it's to schedule a meeting, because otherwise, if you think about it, you could never schedule a meeting. So we are going to have to poll the members. I know that some of our members have limited availability. It may be we're looking at a meeting this Saturday. I'm going to have to talk to everybody and see what people's availability is for that. But we're going to need to get a meeting in. I don't know that we can go much beyond Saturday and give the administration the opportunity to implement, whatever plan it is that we decide. So we're going to have to come back and talk about this all in detail. So having said my piece, Dr. J, you chimed in for a second. Do you have something you want to add?
Sure. Well, I just want to reiterate your point that, this is not something we've been holding back on all summer long. It became really known to us once we got the data back for distance learning. We realized, just how many students were interested, roughly 20% of the district. And especially high numbers at Quidnesset, and that really provided an opening for us that our senior leadership really noticed this week. Obviously, after the numbers came in on Sunday. So this is that fresh. It's 2 days old, this idea that we've been working hard on it in the last couple of days. And the more we put our energy into it and analyze what it could mean, we realize that it is really a great way to, to save a lot of funding, which we would have a real difficult time coming up with otherwise. But just, really to accomplish a lot of things, and even to have extra staff available to us to help us with things is a real bonus. So really happy about that. But I also want to point out that if the committee were to choose option 1 or 2, simply, authorizing funds to hire staff, I don't believe that would require a new meeting, but obviously we don't know where we're going to go with this discussion yet. So, but we do need decisions right away. We have our job placement program on Monday, and our first professional day with our teachers is Tuesday. So this is all go time right now.
So any members of the school committee want to be recognized to discuss the reopening in general, or the plans that were proposed this evening? Ms. Hoskins.
I mean, I have some questions starting with the high school, and I just got the impression from our last meeting that we were going to look at other options, and I don't feel that was done. I feel that Barbara Morrison, Dr. Ojay just came back with us and said, again, why they want to do the plan that they have. I would like to know on the kids that are going on the B day, are they still learning on their own, or are they actually going to get some synchronous learning or recorded learning from the MOA that was passed? So I'm concerned about that, not necessarily the time in that 1 hour, if they're missing lunch, which is a half hour, but I am concerned that we're expecting them to go to school one day and learn on their own the next, learn something the next, as opposed to going to school, staying home and being able to either live stream or have a recording of that class that was taught so that they get taught those classes.
Dr. Morse, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So our expectation is that the students that are home on distance learning are following the daily schedule. So for each class, they're expected to check into that class at the time the class starts. If a teacher's doing synchronized learning, if they're comfortable doing the live feed, then absolutely those students at home would be participating in that. Absent the live feed, the teachers should be recording what they had the day before and posting it that night so that that student can engage in that lesson during that lesson time the next day, and then be prepared to ask questions of the teacher during that 1 hour at the end of the day.
Okay, and then as far as the 3 option, obviously the first option, very expensive, and the last option, very uprooting for a lot of elementary school kiddos. I have concerns of we're only asking distance learning to do a semester, and we're talking about moving kids for a year. I have questions about if it goes back to full learning, do the kids then get bumped back into the school you just closed? What happens, will kids from those schools who are moved be kept with their friends so that they'll at least have contacts and be with people and teachers they know? I have questions about kids with, any IEPs and 504s who are now going to an open classroom school from a classroom that had walls. So I have a lot of questions. I don't obviously think they'll be all answered tonight. We were just presented with this tonight, so it's not like we have seen this before and had time to digest it.
So my thinking on, moving students, would be that, primarily the move would be mostly Forest Park to Quidnesset, and all of those students would be moving together, and be in a lot of the same classrooms, and possibly even with some of the same teachers that they're familiar with from Forest Park, in doing that. So I think, it's hard to say because there's a job placement program involved in this, and there's so much movement this year. We normally do a job placement program in early June, and so there's a lot of people that have been kind of waiting to see how this is going to play out, and now there's going to be a lot of movement on Monday. So it's hard to predict exactly how that's going to work out. In terms of, putting things back when people are done, it is absolutely our goal to bring students back to, if they, after a semester of distance learning, decide they want to come in, we want them to come back into, that classroom where they were originally going to be. That's a lot easier to do at the middle and high school with the format that we have, but even at the elementary school, that's going to be our goal to do that. The only point that I could see this possibly being a problem is if one of those classes happens to be capped. And in that case, and we do this a lot in this district because sometimes we run into cap situations and people who even move into a neighborhood are told maybe you have to go to same grade, same curriculum, but at a different school. So it does happen from time to time. I don't think it would happen too often, particularly in this design where we looked at the numbers for the elementary classrooms. They're relatively low in this model. There's a good, 6 or 7 spaces in every elementary classroom. So after that semester, if people want to move, there probably would be opportunities to do it. And there could be movement both ways. There could be people who are in school say, I would now like to go to distance learning. And you could see on that list that I gave that there's a lot of room in those sections as well. When the time comes, I can't guarantee there would be, but things are looking good right now. And we can always go back as a committee and say, do we need to, open up another section of one or the other at the end of the semester based on what, is the state of, our scenario in school and based on the number of requests that we have, for movement, in and out of the schools.
I guess my last question would be, again, with moving the kids and looking at the LEAPS program, you suggested that go to Stony. Again, it's an open classroom school. Would those kids be put in one of the kindergarten rooms that has walls?
Yes, they would.
Okay.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
One, based on what you just said, Bill, or Dr. Ajay, I'm not sure I actually agree with you about the spacing. I did see some classes in there that are up over 20, 25. Some of those classes, that's about what we would have had anyway in your Plan 3, where I think the intent was to reduce the number of kids in a classroom to about half, and now in Plan 3, we're back up to really actually high numbers, is what I would consider high.
Well, the plan was never designed to make the classes in half. It was kind of a hope of ours that in people choosing distance learning, that it would result in, making a lot lower numbers in classes, right? So, but, like I said, there's a trade-off on every decision. If we want, truly lower numbers all around the in-person classroom district, then that first option is the option to pick. But it comes with an enormous price tag, and I would guess we would want to engage with the town council about helping us to come up with those kinds of funds. It's a huge amount of money. The second way of doing it, doesn't really change the numbers in the classes. It's a little bit more actually than the third option, but what it does do is, it still costs us $300,000 or $400,000, and it doesn't get us those additional staff that we can reassign in different places. So every plan, and I'll be happy to implement the plan that the school committee wants me to implement. No problem at all. I wouldn't put one out there if I didn't think it's something we could work with. But like I said, every one of them has some pros to it and has some cons to it. And I get it, moving that many students from one school to another is, the students would have a lot of anxiety just over that particular issue in a time when there's already plenty of anxiety to go around, so.
And you said some kids will go to Fishing Cove, so which children go to Fishing Cove?
We haven't gotten to that particular detail yet. We're not sure if that would be like certain neighborhoods or, just at certain grade levels. But
so you're saying most kids would go to Quid, but some of the Forest Park kids
most
end up
most of the Forest Park population would end up at Quid. Some of it would end up at Fishing Cove.
So there will be some.
They both have room.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think there was one more question, but I can't remember.
We're gaining room in those two buildings from the number of students that have chosen distance learning, but also because we now have available to us like music rooms and libraries that we can turn into classrooms. So we're actually increasing our footprint of the number of available classrooms, and there are significantly less students in all three of those schools, Fishing Cove, Gwinnett, and Forest Park.
And if we hire the 13 teachers in scenario A and we go to distance learning as required by the state, then what happens? They just stay where they are?
That's an excellent question. And if Governor Raimondo says we're going to go distance learning for the whole year, I would certainly like to know that before you commit to $1.2 million for distance learning teachers, because then everybody will be a distance learning teacher and we really wouldn't have to move anyone anywhere.
Right. But you said you need to know by Monday, right? And she's making the decision on Monday?
Right. Yeah. Okay. But again, Governor, I haven't gotten any sense from Governor Raimondo other than she wants to open in full. I mean, she's made that crystal clear. So even if she does say, that she wants to start in distance learning, I think there's an intention there that at some point she wants everyone back in school. And, a lot of people noted that tonight. I mean, there is certainly a lot of good that kids can get from being in school. The mental health, they're getting up, getting out, socializing with their peers and with their teachers, being face-to-face in their learning. That is a good thing. So we want that to happen as much as possible. Of course, we want it to be as safe as possible as well.
I have a couple.
One second.
Points. Yep.
Okay, so Mr. Mather, you have the floor.
Okay. I have a couple of talking points. First, to address the option, and you touched on it a little bit, Dr. O'Shea. If we go with option one at a cost of $1.2 million, hire the 13 teachers, that would get us the smaller class sizes that we really need right now if we're going to be going in person. It would also give the opportunity for students to come back to their original classes because the room is there. The classes are going to be smaller. And also the opportunity for everybody to guarantee to get back to their original school. And I would encourage us to have a conversation with the town council about helping to pay for that, since they have expressed multiple times a desire to help us. And if that could be a zero budget option as well, with the help of town council, then my personal opinion is if this is the direction that we're going to go, and we can get funding for it from the town council, then that seems like a no-brainer to me. I also have a couple of other talking points.
Okay.
If you've got a few minutes. First of all, I just want to start by saying that in all likelihood, if we step back and take a look at the big picture and what we're doing right now and jumping through all the hoops and rescheduling and negotiations, that all of this is likely only temporary. And if trends continue and we can learn from anything from other schools that have already made the decision to open and have opened, our transition to distance or learning is going to be likely be fairly quick. And I know the distance learning survey that was sent out only shows 20% participation in the Distance Learning Academy. And I figured I'm 20% of the school committee, so I can speak for the 20%.
Well, just to be clear, 20% K through 12.
K through 12, yes.
Yes.
Got it. So according to the Rhode Island Department of Health's website today, well, actually, according to it, when the governor closed schools back on March 13th, our daily new infection rate was 6 people. Just yesterday, we had 60 new cases in the state, and 3 days before that, we had 137. I think we're exponentially worse than we were when the governor decided to close schools in the first place. That's my biggest red flag. This was only 5.5 months ago, and we haven't come that far. We don't know the long-term effects of the virus on our bodies. We don't know so much about this, and I feel like at this point we're committing too many resources, writing too many policies, negotiating too much, making too many risks for something that is likely going to be transitioning to distance learning in the near future anyways. I honestly, personally feel like it's reckless and dangerous and financially irresponsible to open it fully in person. Now, I don't want to downplay the tremendous advantages of in-person learning and social emotional support and a lot of things that we've talked about tonight, and this just socialization for our kids and screening of health issues and potential domestic situations that can't get screened virtually. School meals being provided, immediate feedback and support, all of these things, not relying on technology quite as much, potential internet issues or computer issues, which are going to be hard to deal with during a distance learning scenario. But to me, it comes down to three things really: logistics, budget, and first and foremost, safety. I have a lot of concerns about a lot of things safety related. First is the morning COVID checklist. I think it's flawed and it's unenforceable. It relies on parents to be honest. When you can feed your kid a couple of Tylenol, get the fever down and send them on the bus, that is often an option for parents that are stuck in a situation where they have to be at work. The COVID checklist relies on our nurses, our aides, our teachers, our bus drivers to enforce it, which is, it's an awful position to put somebody in, especially since we're not going to be temperature checking children as they get on the bus or get to school. It's relying entirely on parents. I have issues with the fire drills and the active shooter drills in the schools, with 350 students and 60 staff trying to get out of, and I've mentioned this a little bit before, trying to get out of a building in 2 minutes and still maintain social distance in classes that are 14 feet apart. Again, I'm a kind of a nerdy numbers guy. You do that math and that would be a half a mile long line of kids walking out of a building. Or it would be a half of an acre, 23,000 square feet of spaced out children. That is unrealistic. It's not safe. Active shooter drills, where do the kids hide safely? And, while maintaining social distance, which is the most important part of this whole thing, is maintaining social distance. You've got reduced amount of furniture in the rooms and potentially open windows and open doors. There are safety issues that really are hugely concerning. Another thing that I wanted to mention is bathrooms. At Hamilton, there's 341 students in one building. If we can make an assumption that 170 are girls and 170 are boys, there are only 3 bathrooms in that school. If every kid uses the bathroom once a day, that's 56 kids in one bathroom. And everybody knows nobody uses the bathroom down by the gym. That's one of the 3. So, and I know there are cleaning protocols that have been talked about, but 56 kids using each bathroom every day is not, it's not a secure pod. It's nothing secure about that, no matter how much they clean it. And I know there's going to be scheduled bathroom breaks where all of the first graders go to the bathroom, and then the janitor comes in and cleans it for all the second graders, and then the janitor comes in and cleans it. I don't see that that's a sustainable way of running. I have issues with the busing, with buses, and we're going to be relying on bus drivers and bus monitors to enforce a mask policy without temperature checking. Who cleans these buses? These are all things that are going through my mind. Like, drivers and monitors who are already probably upset for having to enforce these policies, are they going to be the ones that have to clean the buses? And are buses cleaned between each school stop at pickup and drop off? 3 school start times in a day, that's 6 cleanings of a bus every single day. I also have concerns that we're losing these pods that we were talking about, these secure pods of kids, that with incoming specialists and substitute teachers coming in, and the inevitable teacher getting sick and new teachers having to come in, I guess that's a substitute teacher, with busing, moving around the schools, after school activities, there's no way that we're going to be able to keep these pods secure. And not to mention the mask policy that I already talked about. It's unrealistic, it's unenforceable. I have major hesitations about that. I also have questions and hesitations about the budget. If we're needing to hire new staff, you mentioned it before, it's unlikely that we'd be able to even find new staff in less than 3 weeks. We've got 2.5 weeks. If we went to a full distance learning scenario right off the bat, made that decision, we could reduce so much cost associated with and commitments that we're making currently. We could reduce the cost for busing. We could reduce or eliminate the cost of updates and improvements that we're going to have to make to the school's ventilation system and bathrooms and fans and filters and all this kind of stuff, which, by the way, we don't have time to do. We've got 2.5 weeks before we've got kids coming back into this school. There's no time to, address the ventilation issues and touch-free bathroom stuff. And we can eliminate $50,000 a month that we just approved for monthly COVID cleaning fees. Eliminate the need for personal protective equipment for our teachers, and eliminate the need for police details at each school. These are all things that are going to cost a tremendous amount of money to potentially only be temporary. And logistically, the only real good distance learning policy that I feel that we have is at the elementary school level, where we literally have, we've committed to a distance learning academy. We've committed to staff that are going to teach our distance learning students separately, independently, in their own pods. The teachers at the high school and the middle school don't have that. And we call it distance learning, but it's the same teachers that are going to have to teach in person than they are going to have to teach their distance learning students. Am I correct in that assumption, Dr. O'Shea?
At the middle and high school?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
There's so no additional staff at the middle and high school to teach the distance learning students.
No, they're connected to their original classroom.
Yes. So we're going to rely on those teachers that are already stressed, trying to teach students in their classrooms, to also teach students that are distance learning. I don't see how that's possible. I don't see how it's fair for teachers. I don't see how it's fair for students, both in the classroom and distance learning. That's a lose-lose on both levels to me. I have major concerns about our current facilities. I talked about that a little bit with the ventilation and the air conditioners and the bathrooms and stuff like that, and just the logistics of not being able to implement those in time. Not enough time to do the necessary upgrades. The governor's talking about the need to have 4 to 6 air changes per hour in our classrooms. I can't imagine how we're going to be able to do that. These buildings are tremendously old. We're very lucky to have the high school. It's our newest, biggest building that we just spent millions of dollars putting air conditioning in the top floors to now just have the windows open because that's the policy. Fresh air and windows. Even if we did have time to install the ventilation and the air handlers and stuff like that, these old buildings that were built in the 60s, and Wickford Middle is a whole nother level. These old buildings don't have the electrical capacity to be able to handle all this stuff anyway. A lot of the windows don't even open in these classrooms. Wickford Middle Schools, a lot of those windows are painted shut. There's no realistic expectation of fresh air. There's no realistic expectation of ventilation. No matter how much we say it, we've got 2.5 weeks before kids are back in these buildings. Most of the windows at Hamilton Elementary can't even accommodate fans because they open vertically, horizontally, not vertically. By transitioning now and making a commitment to a distance learning model, we can take so many of these conversations off the table. We can have a consistent schedule. We can have synchronous learning for everybody. We can have any school start time we want. We can eliminate the A/B 4x4 schedule at the high school that has been criticized every single meeting that I've been to that we've had so far. We can eliminate the issues with the AP classes and exams. I see so many benefits to this. Teachers won't be required to use all their sick time if they have to test and get quarantined. Can you imagine being exposed, having to test, get in quarantine? Every single one of these teachers that have to do this are going to lose all of their sick time within the first. Greg, you're shaking your head. Can you move up a little bit?
Yeah, because that's not right, Mr. Mather, sorry.
Can you,
Dr. King, or Mrs. King, can you address how that would work, just that one point?
Yes, actually, I do also want to say that the windows at Wickford Middle School are very old, but we do have them so that they can open, and my guys have come up with not an ideal solution, but they certainly have something that we can prop them open. So anyway, it's certainly not an ideal solution. But regarding the sick time, is Mrs. Carroll on? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Do you want to address that, Attorney Carroll?
So, at this point, teacher, it depends is the easiest way to address it. Teachers who are out and who don't have, and we don't have a position for them, will possibly be going on FMLA. So they will be using some of their sick time. Other than that, we haven't come to an agreement on any issues with quarantining or if they get COVID-19.
If I could also jump in about, Mr. Mather, you pointed out, and I appreciate your comments, and I don't take any of this personally. Don't get me wrong.
Nor should you. It's not.
Yeah, right. I know. I've talked to you at length about these issues, and I certainly understand your point of view. Trust me. I mean, there seems to be so many hurdles being thrown at school departments right now that there's certainly a lot of frustration from the superintendent ranks right now about just about everything you talked about. On the issue of school ventilation, we do have some old buildings, and every district does. And, we've had, good ratings, and we've had inspections of our HVAC systems and all that, and they've performed well. But, you know, for different purposes than, you know, filtration for, you know, for COVID-19, obviously. So, you know, we know that there are a ton of news reports out there and even suggestions from, you know, the governor about, you know, different conditions for HVAC systems that can help with this. But we're following the Department of Health guidelines right now. And if they come to us and say that there's a particular standard for HVAC that we're not meeting and we can't open it until we meet that, then that's a whole different story. We have not been told that. And I would think that everybody at the Department of Health knows what a typical school building in the state of Rhode Island looks like, and North Kingstown's are better than most. So, you know, I'm just kind of relying on them to let us know. And this is part of that emergency team that I mentioned, and we're still getting more and more guidance from them, and we will ask, and I've already have done this, but we will continue to ask for very fine details about, you know, what is the standard to open and what is a condition where you definitely should not open. And so far, you know, Dr. Alexander Scott is right there with the governor saying, you know, you should open. They sometimes give us some recommendations about a box fan or something else like that, but they're not saying if you don't have the box fan, do not open. And they haven't given us any specifications for, you know, how many box fans and where they go, and, you know, you get the idea. So
Yeah, that's also
I don't think there's any district in a position to, you know, suddenly, you know, turn around, particularly at this stage in the game, but even earlier in the summer, you know, updating your HVAC system so it meets every guideline that's being, you know, bandied about right now in the news. I'm sure that would, you know, break the budget of just about every district in the state, if not in the country. So, and I'm just assuming that the Department of Health knows that and still feels that, you know, we're safe with the conditions we have.
Understood. I mean, there are recommendations. There's the expectation that we won't be able to meet recommendations. And my hesitation is that we're going to take risks to get our kids back in school, risks to their health, risks to our budget, risks to our relationships with our unions and our bus drivers, and we're going to potentially make all these and take all these risks for something that might be pretty darn short term. I wasn't at the end of my spiel, but I can be now.
Okay. Mr. Jones, I saw you wanted to speak.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions, Dr. J, just for the public, and then
Sure.
for other comments. First, Dr. J, could you elaborate a little? The governor throwing everyone a curveball here a couple days ago about these inspection teams, and as much as you know about them.
Yeah, I wish I knew a heck of a lot more. I really don't. I right after the governor's press conference, this was yesterday. It feels like a week ago now, but it was yesterday, believe it or not. About an hour after that, I got a phone call from someone at RIDE saying that, you know, we had been assigned a particular team, and that team wanted to meet with us, our senior leadership, on Thursday. So that's where we're going to begin. I've understood from other meetings that I've been in that this involves, you know, putting together a checklist of items that they're going to want to see in all of the schools. And, you know, if there's some things that they think you need to have that you don't, they're gonna make sure that they can help you to get them. You know, for instance, if you don't have the right PPE in stock or you need more of it, they would help you with that. They're going to want to see that you have an isolation room in the event that someone, you know, in the school is exhibiting symptoms, or we're supposed to assign a particular room so that person can be isolated until, you know, someone can come.
Excuse me for a second?
Removed, Mr.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to, Dr. O'Shea, I think you can unmute yourself now.
Got it. Can you hear me?
I can, so.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. So, yeah, so that's, you know, Mr. Jones, that's what I know, you know, that they have, I don't have the checklist in front of me to, you know, relate to the community, you know, what specifically they're looking for, but those kinds of procedures, protocols, they're going to want to know about those kinds of things, and they're going to want to look around the building to see about, you know, how we're setting up for social distancing, obviously.
Okay, so, folks, I hit the, you have to ask to be unmuted button, I believe, so if you want to speak, if you could raise your hand, and I'll, this is for school committee members, rather. Mr. Jones, I think you're all set.
Yeah, Don, do I still have the floor, Mr. Chairman? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zay. I guess I just share part of the frustration of the, you know, 80+% of North Kingstown's funding comes from North Kingstown taxpayers, and yet the state continually changes guidance, comes in at the last minute, you know, to me, an inappropriate use of military resources, using the National Guard in this way, type of stuff. And I would find it incredibly frustrating that why the governor intended to do this, why she didn't do it 2 months ago, and focused her energies on that instead of tying us all up in knots and then chastising us for not being able to untie the knots. I guess I would say real quick, Mr. Mather, again, I understand all your comments, but that's, I think, part of what we have to choose, and part of what the parents and community who funds most of our things are telling us is that they want us to give them options and give choices. And I appreciate the administration's really innovative efforts on the elementary school. I think there's some appealing parts about the option 3, such as having an administrator overlooking that, which I think is important, freeing up, you know, medical, health, and social emotional supports that can be distributed around the district. I would come back, though, that I still find that while I understand that, you know, it's just not physically possible with the guidance to go to do the same at the high school, that I still feel that we should, instead of just being presented, you know, why we picked the certain things, have a more fuller presentation on the 4x4 versus the 8 period. I understand there are additional risks going to that. There are also additional benefits. And I think that should be more fully laid out for the committee to decide. So my first question is, Dr. Zay, is, you know, when, I know sooner than later, obviously, is the answer, but, you know, if we have a meeting Saturday and we decide to change the schedule, that's still enough time to implement the high school.
Well, I would think it would be pretty rushed for us at that point. Dr. Morse, I don't know if you want to weigh in, but, you know, if the committee is, you know, telling us that that's what we need to do, we're going to figure it out. But Dr. Morse, I don't know if you completely disagree with me or not, but go ahead and chime in. You're muted right now.
It's actually, I have to do
it. Okay.
There you go.
All set? Okay. Yeah. No, I don't agree with you at all, Dr. O'Shea. We're still looking for the best scenario. And what we consider we have right now is the best scenario under the circumstances we have. And if circumstances were to change or the other things would be put in place, we are willing to work with any kind of contingency. I have papers all over my desk with different contingency plans that we can try to shift to. Right up until today, we were looking at numbers. When we found the numbers of distance learners coming from high school, we pulled 250 or so schedules of students to see what we could shift based on those numbers. So we're constantly willing to shift and make it work. So if it's Saturday and we have to put something together on Monday, we're willing to give it a try.
There is, that increased contact piece, Mr. Jones, that occurs with an 8-period schedule. I know you understand that.
Yeah.
But if the feeling of the committee is that the pros outweigh the cons in this respect, we're willing to go to it.
Right. I fully understand that, like you said, everything has an opportunity cost, everything has a trade-off.
Right.
And that's what we need to weigh, and I just think the committee needs to see both what that looks like from an 8-period schedule, and then also what the full day is. I understand that having lunch like we think about it really, is probably impossible given the restrictions and the MOA we have now. But we do have an option of just serving breakfast and just serving lunch out the door, and I think that's at least needs to be presented for parents to think about and for our student liaison to provide some input on. I understand that the busing right now seems to be a bit short, so in the end that might drive that we can't do it, but I would like just to see what both schedules would look like so the committee can have a fuller discussion and decision on both changing the schedule and moving to a longer instructional day. Again, I appreciate that there are pros and cons to both. I think we need to weigh that out, and it may be that either parents have to understand that their child may not be guaranteed a ride home, and maybe legally that's something we can't do. I just think we need to lay out both the schedule and the instructional day options more for the committee. We can do
And
that.
so I will do that for you at our next meeting. If I can just take a moment to summarize some of these points, however, I didn't mean to, skirt your question tonight, and I thought what we did honor this point. But I guess our point is this, that serving the lunch at the high school would be a major operation. Is it possible? I suppose just about anything is if you have all the right resources in the right places. However, that's just not occurring for us right now. There's also the busing piece is a major problem, but also with the day on, day off piece that we have at the high school, we find it is really important to have that office hour opportunity. So when the students are home for the day, they have someone they can rely on, that they can talk to about their work and, answer questions or participate in discussion if need be. That's a big element in the support of all this. So we were trying to lay that out. I will present you with, this is what it would look like under the current condition. This is what it could look like under another condition. And similar to what I just did with these options for you for the elementaries, I'll lay out the pros and cons, and we can discuss at our next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. J. I appreciate that, and Dr. Morse too. I know there's not easy, and it may be that the option is there's no lunch, and we may find that unacceptable. But I think we need to lay it out like you did, very in depth and for the elementary school level. I guess I would close with just saying, Mr. Mather, I have a lot. I know that some of the people in Warwick, I understand where they came from in making the decision early. I truly wish that if the governor was going to go to full distance, she would just have done it instead of stringing us out, which really leads me to the impression that she doesn't want to do that. But if that's her decision, I will be among the many people who will be very upset that she just didn't say it earlier so we could focus and all the heartache as you laid out, the administration and staff and faculty have had to go through to provide these different options for North Kingstown community members for their child's education. But I would also say, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say there are parents who might be going, if my child is home and I can't get to work, might I lose my job? Or I have to go to my job, so I'm going to take a calculated risk leaving a child at home that I don't really feel comfortable with, or struggling to find, supervision. And so I think in any scenario, you can find plausible occurrences that are negative all the way around. So again, I would commend that at least relative to other districts, the administration has keyed up a lot. I appreciate that we'll also extend that to thinking, a little more about the high school as well. But there really are no good choices. There's just a lot of trying to do as best we can and to honor that there's a spectrum of feelings out there in the community. I share your sentiment, about the budget. I fully worry that state aid is going to come crushing, 2 years from now with the funding formula. And nobody's talking about that because it's lost in obviously solving the immediate problem. But in the same vein, I have to worry that, we really have to think about that even if there's a vaccine in the next 5 months, that's going to be another discussion, whether it's mandatory or not, that even if the governor said, we're in phase fully reopen, whatever that means, right, there are still parents who are going to feel uncomfortable. I just worry that there's never a clean transition from going fully distanced to something else. And so at some point we should say all those problems you point out are probably still going to exist in one fashion or another. I know we can work on some in the interim, but I think we do have to do our best to offer in-person education for the children, again, taking all the considerations that you bring up in mind.
Any other members have any comments they'd like to add? Okay, covered a lot tonight. So I will ask, I might as well do it now. Is everyone available for a meeting on Saturday? I see nodding, I see no shaking of head. Okay, so we'll poll the members as to a time, and we will have a meeting on Saturday. We'll reopen this discussion, and we're going to have some decisions to make, because we are going to need to decide one of the options that Dr. O'Shea presented to us, or if the committee chooses to go down a different path, so be it. But we'll have to make some decisions on Saturday that are going to affect where we go. So, and I encourage members of the public very much between now and Saturday to reach out to any members of the school committee. Our email addresses are on the website, as well as, the administration, with any questions that you may have, so that we can hear what I see you there, Jenny, 1 second, what people have to say. And again, a lot of new information and options today that have not been on the table at previous meetings, and that is simply a rapidly changing situation. Ms. Hoskins, you had raised your hand.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Dr. O'Shea, are you going to be sending out a message to the people who will be affected with Decision 3, just so that if they're not on tonight and it's a lot?
Yeah, I can do that.
I think it would be appreciated that they get a heads up that this was talked about and not hear it secondhand.
Right, I get it. Okay.
Thank you. That's a good point, Ms. Hoskins. Thank you. All right. So, unless anyone else had anything to add, we've reached the end of our agenda, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Hoskins. Second.
Second.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Mather, you were waving your hand, but will Mr. Jones? And I didn't unmute you. So, motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much for taking part in our meeting this evening, everyone. Thank you.